Episode 1. Chapter 2, Umbrella of Protection. Oh oh oh. A burst of rooster crowing woke Niss up. He sat up and looked around. At this moment, he was no longer in the underground secret room, but lying on a row of barrels in a distillery. There was a layer of burlap under his body, which used to be thrown in the corner, torn and dirty, but now it had become quite clean. The silver flat pot taken down from the attic was right by his right hand. As soon as he saw this thing, his stomach made a gurgle sound. He hadn't eaten anything since yesterday noon, and it had been 24 hours since his last meal. It is not advisable to drink on an empty stomach, but now he couldn't care less. After taking 2 sips of wine, Niss immediately felt his stomach warming up a bit, but he also sensed a hint of intoxicating sensation. Now is not the right time to go to the church. He remembered the old man's instructions from last night, to think carefully about what to say before going. Suddenly, Niss found that his mind became unusually clear, thinking quickly about everything, and all the things he didn't know before came rushing out of his mind. The fact that he can notice this difference is the best proof itself. If it were the old him, he definitely wouldn't be able to notice any abnormal feelings. Doubts gradually arose in my mind, and the answer immediately flashed in my head. This was definitely done by that old man. Last night, the last thing I remember is the old man making him kneel in front of him and placing his hand on his head. Then consciousness became hazy and he fell asleep. He wanted to go down to the secret room and ask, but then he realized it was already daytime. If his relatives came running over, both he and the old man would be in big trouble. As long as he thought about the huge reward promised by His Majesty the King, and thought about the scene he saw last night, thinking about those people who floated above his head, emitting white light all over their bodies, and looking like angels, he immediately realized that he had gotten himself into a huge trouble. Unlike yesterday's confusion, he now understands how terrible his situation is. He is now equating himself with the remnants of the Templar Knights, and his head is now worth 5,000 pesos. In an instant, he remembered his mysterious background again. Last night, he was ignorant and clueless. Coupled with his excitement, he didn't carefully consider those words. Now, as he recalls the old man's words and reflects on those incomprehensible letters, he increasingly feels that this might be true. At the same time, memories about his father gradually emerged in his mind. There are still some doubts about it. In his memory, his father liked to interact with the church. Not only did he have a relationship with the priest in town, but he also had close relationships with several teachers and would occasionally donate money. However, he had never seen his father pray because his father never forced him to do so. His occasional prayers were completely influenced by the butler. Suddenly, he remembered another doubt. He had once accompanied his father as a guest in someone else's house and noticed that the stories the other children heard before going to sleep were all from the Bible. However, his father would either talk about history or folk tales, and occasionally he would mention ancient mythological stories. The more memories there are, the more things change, and Niss dare not think about it anymore. Gurgle. The sound coming from his stomach made Niss face the reality. Regardless of the truth, regardless of whether my father is involved with the mysterious, symbol society, everything is too distant for him now. The most important thing is to regain everything that belongs to him and teach those relatives a lesson. But for now, the most important thing is to fill the stomach. The church is located next to the intersection on the west side of the town, at a distance from the other houses, perhaps representing the church's transcendent status. At the entrance of the church, a hunchback with a head full of burns was meticulously sweeping the floor. Niss only knows that this person is called Times Ku, is an outsider, and also does not know who threw him in the town. When everyone first saw him, he was already burnt all over. With little vitality left, it was the priest here who took him in and treated him, bringing him back from the brink of death. Later, seeing that he had nowhere else to go, they simply let him stay in the church and do some cleaning and tidying up. It is because of this act of kindness that the people here believe in the goodness and compassion of the priest. Until yesterday, Niss also held the same belief. Yesterday, what happened made him realize that the priest is not a good person at all, and at this moment, he is even more aware of how terrifying this guy is. His relatives and the pig owned by the mayor, all of them can be easily recognized as bad guys, so others will definitely be cautious towards them and not fully believe what they say. However, Father Lyle is different. He is a hypocrite, absolutely impeccable on the surface. It wouldn't be a problem to call him a saint, so many people believe what he says. Until this moment, Niss finally understood why the old man asked him to find a priest. As long as he could convince this person, the others were simply not worth fearing. He chose to come at this time after careful consideration. It should be just after the morning prayer. The priest is still inside the church, and he hasn't had breakfast yet, but it's hard to say in a little while. If this guy doesn't want to see him, he can definitely come up with various excuses to evade. Tuazixike saw Nisi approaching from a distance and quickly intercepted him. He tilted his neck and said with great difficulty, "The priest can't help either. He guessed that you came back to find him, but it's useless." Niss was not annoyed by the camel's obstruction. He is no longer the same person as yesterday. From the muddy eyes of Time's Ku, what he saw was pity, and the voice that leaked out carried a comforting taste. This is a person with a hard life, but also a truly good person. Niss suddenly realized that he had never really looked at this person before. Like the other people in town, they would always avoid Time's Ku from a distance because of their ugly hunchback and terrifying burns, as if they were avoiding the plague. However, they completely failed to notice that Time's Ku was the most devout person in town. They prayed more times a day than the priest and were more focused and dedicated during prayer than anyone else. When they had free time, this hunchback would clean the church, and the church's floors and furniture would shine as if they had been waxed. "You are a good person, don't worry. The priest won't blame you. I have found evidence that proves I am not a bastard." Niss knew that the camel was stopping him from entering on the priest's orders, and the words he just said were also instructed by the priest. When the camel heard Niss say that he already had strong evidence in his hands, he was suddenly stunned because the priest did not tell him what he should do if Niss had evidence. Seeing the camel stunned, Niss knew that the opportunity had come. As his mind became clear, his movements also became much more agile. He quickly shrunk his body and easily slipped past the camel's elbow, swiftly entering the church. This is a very small church. Besides having a spacious and wide door, there is also a bell tower over 3 meters high next to it. The whole structure is similar to a farmhouse. The church only has 2 rooms. The larger one on the outside is the place for worship, and there is a small door next to it that leads to the inner room, where the priest lives. Just finished morning prayers, the priest hasn't tidied up yet, so he is still in the outer room. Niss walked in and saw him immediately. Niss noticed that when he appeared, there was a slight change on the priest's face, a fleeting expression of displeasure that was directed not only at him, but more so at the poor gatekeeper. It was clear that this guy was annoyed that Elka couldn't stop him. However, as a qualified hypocrite, the priest knows how to conceal himself, so that slight displeasure disappeared as soon as it appeared. "I'm very sorry, I believe Urk has already told you, but I really can't help you. Their accusations are grave, both legally and morally. Illegitimate children have no inheritance rights." The priest immediately shut his mouth as soon as he came up. That can't be considered evidence, just one side of the story. Niss already knew that the priest would say this, and he had already imagined various possibilities before he came. No matter what the priest says to evade the issue, he has corresponding countermeasures. "I have concrete evidence in my hands. I have found the priest who baptized me, and I believe the church definitely has a record of my baptism. Just one check and we can know the truth." The priest was not prepared, but his mind was not slow either. He quickly said, "This is not useful. The record of baptism does not mean that your actions are legal. It can only be said that your sins have been reduced to some extent through baptism, so you should be grateful to the church." Niss didn't pay any attention to his excuses and continued on, saying, "The person who baptized me is a friend of my father's, and I believe he should know my situation." The priest furrowed his brow, feeling that something was different about the little one today. Suddenly, he had a sense of unease. However, it is obviously too late to change his position at this moment, as he has already accepted bribes from those people. This can be considered as evidence, but it's a bit forced. Even close friends can make mistakes, just like your situation. You must have your parents' marriage certificate and a birth certificate. The priest didn't dare to speak too definitively. This was based on his many years of experience. Many things that were originally certain could unexpectedly change due to certain reasons, so it was necessary to leave oneself some room for flexibility in everything. But to make him stand on the side of the little guy and go against the little guy's relatives, the priest would definitely not do that. Upon hearing this, Niss was somewhat surprised, which was unexpected for him. However, he quickly understood one thing. Why did the old man ask him to find a priest? In addition to the fact that this hypocrite indeed had some power, another important reason was that hypocrites often hesitate and like to have a foot in both camps. My father got married to my mother during his tenure, and with a simple search, we can find the witnesses of the wedding. As for my birth certificate, my relatives probably destroyed it by now, but the church should definitely have a record. Someone can check the church where my father served, and we should be able to find the results. Niss said in theory, the problem is I don't have the right to investigate these. Child, I really can't help. The priest turned around and was about to go into his own room, feeling a bit overwhelmed. Niss didn't even try to stop, but continued on his own. The priest who baptized me is called Turlidanosis. 10 years ago, he was just a priest in a small church in Megryan, but now he is the priest of the Lango parish. The priest suddenly froze halfway through his body, and now even if you ask him to leave, he dares not to. Believe me, even if you obtain the territory, there is no way to keep it. The priest spoke a sincere word this time. I know, so all I want is to take back everything that belongs to me, and then I will donate them all to the church. I will join the church and dedicate myself to God. Of course, I cannot donate the land, so for that piece, I will give up my inheritance rights. However, as the price for giving up my inheritance rights, I will have the right to designate an heir. It will depend on the performance of my relatives. Whoever satisfies me will be eligible for this. When Niss came to the last sentence, he almost changed his mind temporarily, but in the end, he gritted his teeth and chose the old man's way. The priest felt a chill rising from the soles of his feet. He carefully looked at Niss and confirmed that this was not another person. However, his intuition told him that this little guy in front of him was completely different from the young Master Cornell he knew before. He even hesitated whether to find the people in charge of the church court to have them check if this child was possessed by a demon. Although he himself couldn't sense any evil presence, some demons hide very well. However, just now, the mention of the Bishop of Lango Diocese made this priest extremely uneasy. Seeing the priest hesitate, Niss knew that it was time to deliver the final blow. I hope you can uphold justice and fairness, if you deem it appropriate. I will ask someone of your stature to take me to Grange, and I will give them half of my property. Unfortunately, this means that only half of the property that could be donated to the church will remain. This is a threat, a blatant and very real threat. The priest is well aware that not only the fathers of the Lango Diocese, but even the bishop of this diocese, would know that he caused the church to lose such a large sum of wealth. They would definitely assign him to some absurd little village on the border. Almost in an instant, a trace of murderous intent arose in his heart. He doesn't need to do it himself. As long as he tells those relatives in Nice, the little guy will definitely not see the sun tomorrow. However, this thought quickly disappears. He originally didn't plan to stand on the side of Niss because there was no profit and the chances of winning were slim. But now the situation has changed. The little guy has a trump card in his hand, and it will bring huge benefits to the church. Although a large sum of wealth will definitely be handed over, a part of it will be kept, which is definitely much more than what the little guy's relatives promised in return. At this moment, he was somewhat glad that he didn't accept that money. Moreover, when discussing the remuneration with those people, he never mentioned a single word about money, but rather used the pretext of building a church from beginning to end. Otherwise, if there were any handles in the hands of those people, he would probably have to inform on them now. By that time, once the matter is exposed, what awaits him is not exile to a remote area, but being tied to a stake and roasted into jerky. A burst of hoofbeats interrupted the conversation between Niss and the priest. Both people were surprised. Could it be that there are remnants of the Templar Knights passing through this small town again? However, this time the sound of hooves does not appear urgent, neither like fleeing nor like chasing. The priest was thinking about what had happened to make the tense atmosphere ease up a bit. The arrival of this horse team was exceptionally timely, and he left Niss and walked out of the church. Niss ran out behind. He is no longer concerned about the inheritance from the priest. At this moment, he has set his sights on something much further away. He ran out because he had a very bad premonition. He didn't handle the number of seats as the old man had said, and he had a feeling that something bad would happen. A cavalry unit is slowly entering the town, and the entrance to the town has been blocked. You can also see two groups of people and horses circling around on both sides, which indicates they are setting up a blockade. He knew that the thing he was most worried about had happened. Suddenly, Niss' pupils contracted, and he saw a group of people being surrounded as they entered the small town. If it were before, he would definitely only know that those were some important figures, but now, he immediately recognized that there were 7 knights of the Holy Order there, 4 paladins, 2 high-ranking priests, and a bishop. Niss didn't know how he could tell them apart, but with just one glance, he naturally understood their identities. In fact, it was difficult to distinguish them by appearance alone. These people were fully armed, wearing heavy armor, helmets on their heads, and shields and weapons hanging in front of their saddles. This is an intuition, as if he deals with these people all day long, so he can tell their identities from their every move. He didn't have such ability before. Obviously it is related to that old man. The elderly not only made him smarter, but also added a lot of knowledge to his mind that originally did not belong to him. The property that originally belonged to him quickly ceased to be his, and the knowledge that originally did not belong to him has now found its way into his mind. Such is the unpredictability of life. However, now is not the time for lamentation. Niss, you have many ways to catch criminals in your mind, which must have been instilled by the elderly. The Knights Templar is a military organization where capturing and killing people is commonplace. Just thinking about those methods, Niss breaks out in a cold sweat. The simplest and most direct way to mix rice is to dig 3 feet underground and search every corner of the town. A more skillful method is to bring some dogs. And the most brilliant method, of course, is to use divine arts or magic. There are 2 high-ranking priests and 1 bishop in this team, most of whom are capable of performing divine magic. Niss doesn't know if his family's wine cellar can escape the search of magic, and whether the old man hiding inside will be discovered. If the old man is exposed, then he is also finished. Just at this moment, a very bold idea suddenly jumped out of his mind. This is definitely a crazy idea. Niss was startled by it himself, but in an instant, he felt it could work. Because of the madness, it will exceed everyone's expectations and catch everyone by surprise. Niss approached the priest angrily and said, "Will the bishop stay here?" The priest felt the approach of Niss, and now he is afraid of this little guy. Originally, he thought that Niss was going to bring up the issue of inheritance again, but he didn't expect it to be such a different question. However, the priest is not surprised by the problem itself, but rather by one particular detail. "How do you know there is a bishop inside?" the priest asked. Feeling, "Don't forget that my father and Bishop Gnos were friends. I have also listened to his teachings, so I have some understanding of the identity of clergy. Having enough wisdom, lying is actually a very easy thing to do." The words of Niss made the priest dare not have any unusual thoughts. Only those who are members of the church and those who have often seen bishops may have such understanding. With this understanding, the priest's attitude immediately became gentle. "What are your thoughts?" "If the bishop needs to stay overnight in town, my house is absolutely the most suitable, especially now that all the furniture has been moved out and it is empty inside. It is perfect for redecorating and having the wealthiest families in town bring out their best furniture. I believe the bishop will definitely be very satisfied with the accommodation." Niss leisurely talking about his thoughts. The priest felt a chill in his heart upon hearing these words. He knew, this was revenge, naked revenge. After the Baron's death, not a single person in the entire town showed sympathy or compassion. On the contrary, there were many who kicked him while he was down, and even more who took advantage of the situation. The rest simply stood by and watched the spectacle. The little one, with such grandiose reasons, is able to make everyone in the town pay the price. The priest pretended not to hear, as he didn't want to provoke anger. Afterwards, while the little one could give up everything and enter a monastery to practice, he insisted on staying in the town. Seeing that the priest had no reaction, Niss continued, "The reason I am donating my property to the church is entirely because of your teachings." The priest understood that this was a promise of benefits and also a threat. He either had to board this pirate ship or gain nothing, with the possibility of facing retaliation from the little guy. Just thinking about the immense pressure that Niss had just put on him, the priest was already scared. The little guy is quite impressive. At such a young age, he understands how to use both kindness and authority, and he is also good at taking advantage of opportunities. With a bishop supporting him from behind, and the possibility of connecting with another bishop, his future is definitely bright and promising. This is first and foremost God's will. It is God who has touched you. My teachings are insignificant. When the priest says this, it is equivalent to accepting Niss' proposal, and at the same time, it also indicates that he does not dare to take credit. My relatives have left behind a lot of property that should be given to the church. I believe that the arrival of this bishop is also the will of God. Niss also plans to vent for himself. Greed is one of the original sins and will be punished. And usurping the legitimate right of inheritance is also a serious crime in the kingdom's legal code. Since deciding to stand on the side of Niss, the priest no longer cares about offending those people. He has already realized that everyone, including the mayor and the 2 deacons, will have a tragic ending. Even if we can pass this hurdle now, when the little one grows up and establishes himself in the church, the revenge that will come in due time may destroy countless families. In case the little one joins the religious tribunal because of hatred. The priest dared not think any further. It seemed as if he had already seen God opening a room in the depths of hell, waiting for someone to move in. Niss' home became lively again after a quiet day. A group of well-dressed servants were busy bustling around the house, carrying and holding clothes, beds, tables, and chairs. All of these furniture pieces were adorned with gold and silver, enamel painted, and exquisitely beautiful. Just as Niss had said, under this pretext, the best furniture and decorations from the wealthy families in town were borrowed. Spread out on the thick carpet in the 3rd room are belongings of the wood merchant, Huenga. The paintings hanging on the wall are from Malanigia's collection, and the sculptures were brought from the town hall. Niss is like a supervisor commanding those who are imposing, and anyone who is slow will be immediately punished, with the lightest punishment being at least 20 lashes. These were all once servants in his family. Just a few days ago, he had always been very kind to these imposing people because his father always told him to be friendly towards others. Unfortunately, he is kind to others, but others may not be so kind to him. As soon as my father passed away, more than half of these people went to our distant relatives. When our relatives came to grab things, many of these people were accomplices. They knew everything inside out and were the most aware of those things. They all competed to show off in front of our relatives. Niss is not very demanding. He doesn't need everyone to be like a housekeeper. Even if these people rely on his relatives, he doesn't really care. But betraying his former master is something he can't tolerate. The punishment has only just begun, as Niss watches people work while caressing familiar objects without objection. Those porcelain tableware, silver kettle, and blankets were all my father's favorite things when he was alive. The books on the bookshelf were collected by him over the years. In the corner, there is also a large box containing precious jewelry, rolls of silk, and other valuable items that have been returned. When it comes to recovering assets, there is no one more powerful than the church. They have over a dozen techniques to determine whether a person is lying. In front of these teachers, there is absolutely no way to hide any secrets. Niss has heard that there was crying coming from the estate at noon. He also knows that the recovered stolen goods are definitely much more than what those people took away. Who dares to question the fairness of the church? These properties are nominally his, but they will all be donated to the church in the future. He had long suspected that this would be the outcome, and this is his revenge. Suddenly, Niss felt someone approaching him. He turned his head and saw someone from his distant relatives, whose name seemed to be Moda or Noda. This person left the deepest impression on him as being sleazy and stingy, definitely the most unpleasant to look at. However, the rest of the group was equally detestable, with a few being either arrogant or hypocritical, all of them being of the same low quality. Niss simply didn't want to deal with this person. He turned his head and continued to supervise the servants' work. This person had an incredibly thick skin. Despite knowing that Niss didn't want to engage with him, he still approached stealthily, lowered his head, and stood in front of Niss. "My dear nephew, I know I made a mistake yesterday. Those people over there are all scoundrels, trying to seize your property. I had no idea they had such plans. Otherwise, I would have fought them with all my might. How could they do such a thing? This guy definitely has no shame." Niss still ignores. This guy was well prepared and knew that Niss couldn't be dealt with in just a few words, so he had plenty of patience. "Knight, I am not here to seek your forgiveness, but to tell you something. There is definitely something suspicious about your father's death. The carriage he was riding in had its axle tampered with and sawed open by someone. This guy has revealed his most important trump card. Sure, here is the translation." Sure enough, as soon as the words fell, Niss' face immediately changed drastically. The old man had once told him that once he relinquished his inheritance rights to the territory and title, his relatives would definitely stage a dog-eat-dog show, breathing accusations and exposing each other's secrets. However, he did not appear superior. His father's death was indeed not an accident, but a deliberate murder. Niss doesn't know that this relative who came to inform him cannot be sure that his father's death was a murder. This accusation is more like a groundless suspicion without evidence, but neither of them cares about this. The relative only needs a weapon to attack and a reason to deprive others of their inheritance rights. And Niss has already sworn to make his relatives pay the price. Think again, is the servant in charge of the carriage the first one who left you and joined someone else? Do you know who I'm talking about? Baden, Rosal and Magnik are his accomplices. Do you remember how they treated you yesterday? Magnik choked you, wanting to kill you. I suspect he was the one who directly attacked you. I'm not sure if there are other conspirators among the others, but old Vic and Betty are definitely in the know. Niss has been listening all along. He knows that some of it is true, and some of it is false. The guy in front of me intends to drag all the other relatives in, either as accomplices or as informants. He is the only one who has nothing to do with this matter. Niss doesn't care to distinguish between the true and the false anyway. Those guys are all the same, not a single good person among them. Seeing Niss' changing expression, the person knew that his words had taken effect and pretended to be lofty, saying, "I'm not after anything, just here to remind you to be careful." Niss is not interested in listening to this bullshit at all. At this moment, his mind is full of thoughts about the cause of his husband's death. He wants to investigate these matters thoroughly. If it is indeed premeditated murder, he must make the mastermind behind it pay the price. But reason tells him that now is not the time. He must deal with the crisis at hand. Digressing will only cost him his life, and he won't even have a chance for revenge. Seeing the servants arrange everything neatly and clean the entire house inside and out, his home became even more magnificent than before. Niss sent them all away. He asked the camel and Kek to deliver the letter to the bishop, while he himself took a jar, a can of water, and some food from the kitchen, and walked through the courtyard into the brewery. The remains of the winery have been cleaned up, and the garbage in the fermentation tanks has been removed. A wooden board has been placed on the ground near the secret door. Niss spread the mat on the wooden board, and he will sleep here tonight. He had just laid down when he saw the secret door slowly move aside, and the old man walked out from the hidden room. What surprised Niss was that the old man had completely transformed, and his face had become identical to the husband of the housekeeper. The husband of the housekeeper has always been running around, responsible for collecting debts. He has hardly seen his face, let alone this old man. However, in an instant, Niss remembered the series of strangeness on him, those sudden thoughts that emerged, and the knowledge that was previously unknown. All of this should be the old man's masterpiece. Since he can give, he can surely take as well. Give me something to eat first, I'm extremely hungry. The old man seized the food bowl while daydreaming in Niss. Niss is not competing either. Although he didn't have dinner, he ate plenty for breakfast and lunch, and his stomach is still not hungry. He knows the old man must be extremely hungry, and he knows how unpleasant it feels to be hungry. He was about to go to the kitchen to get some food when he saw the old man put down his food bowl and mutter to himself, "I can't eat too much. I've been locked up for over 3 years, and I haven't had a full meal in a long time." If I suddenly overeat, it will definitely be fatal. Upon hearing this, Niss admired the elderly person even more. He had only been hungry for a day, but he felt extremely uncomfortable. When the priest offered him food in the morning, he had a big appetite and kept eating until he couldn't eat anymore. The old man has been hungry for over 3 years, yet he is able to stop at just a taste. How incredible is his self-control! Since the old man refused to eat more, he naturally became impolite. You should know that these are all delicacies prepared for the bishop, which are usually not available. While eating, he asked, "Aren't you afraid of being discovered? This is the safest way. You have just experienced a change, and those servants who left, scattered, no one can recognize me. Besides, there is also the bishop who is watching the door for us." The old man lay down on the wooden board, completely unconcerned. At this moment, he really didn't look like a prisoner at all. There were no visible wounds on his body, and he was wearing clean clothes. "I'm worried that the bishop will notice something. Niss is not very clear, which one is more powerful, the old man or the bishop? If those few paladins or knights were the ones moving in, I might have some concerns. Their ears are extremely sensitive, and they would definitely be able to hear us talking here. The bishop, on the other hand, doesn't have this ability. He might be able to do it with his divine magic, but whenever he uses it, I can sense it here." The elderly person has his confidence, which comes from countless experiences of life and death. Although his rank may not be much different, he is definitely not comparable to those guys who rely on preaching to rise to the position of bishop, as he has been rolling in the sea of corpses and blood every day. Suddenly, a faint smile appeared at the corner of the old man's mouth. He tilted his ear for a while, then whispered, "I'm afraid the bishop is even more worried about being watched by others than you." "Why?" Niss this time is a bit difficult to understand. The old man said mysteriously, "You will know soon." Not long after he finished speaking, the sound of Chowza came from ahead, indicating that the bishop had already entered Niss' house. The house in front and the workshop are not too far apart, so normally he shouldn't be able to hear anything. However, at this moment, he faintly hears voices from inside. There were voices of priests and some unfamiliar people, mixed with the voice of the mayor. The pig seemed to be trembling, so the voice was a bit shaky. Niss turned his head to look at the old man. He knew that this must be another one of the old man's tricks, as it could actually make his hearing so sharp. The more dangerous the situation, the more important it is to understand the surrounding circumstances. It is worth taking some risks for this. The old man took the opportunity to teach Niss a lesson. This is the conclusion he has drawn from countless near-death experiences. He knows that if he keeps hiding and burying his head, the end result is often being caught like a turtle in a jar. After about half an hour, the voices ahead gradually became sparse, and one by one, the priest and those strangers left. The old man gently nudged Niss and pointed to the courtyard. From the small window on the side of the workshop, you can see the situation inside the courtyard. Only to see the monk next to the priest quietly sneaking into the courtyard and gently opening the back door. A carriage entered the courtyard through the back gate. When the carriage came to a stop, the door opened and a person got out. The person was completely wrapped in a tightly sealed cloak, with even their face covered by a thick veil. However, from the way she walks, one can still tell that Niss is a woman. "I have said that this is a decadent era," the old man whispered in Niss. I don't know if it was intentional or unintentional, but when the old man was speaking, the monk in the courtyard looked over in this direction, as if he heard the commotion here. Niss was startled, but he quickly realized that the old man was calm and composed. Immediately, he understood why the old man did this. In the eyes of the world, fugitives should hide and seek, hiding in dark corners, afraid to be seen by others, and certainly not concerned with trivial matters. Therefore, the more they do so, the less likely they are to arouse suspicion. The woman wearing a large cloak entered the house through the kitchen door. The monk next to the bishop followed behind, and before entering the door, he seemed to give a warning and coldly glanced at the winery. After he went in, the house became silent, not even the sound of footsteps could be heard. This is the effect of magic. There are many types of magic that can isolate an area from the outside world. Niss' mind has already been filled with knowledge in this area, and he knows that this kind of magic requires someone to maintain it. Since the bishop would definitely not want to do this difficult task if he wants to enjoy himself, it must be the monk by the bishop's side who is maintaining this divine technique. With this divine technique, people outside cannot hear any noise from inside, and people inside cannot hear any noise from outside. The old man fell silent for a moment, as if observing something. After a while, he smiled and said, "All right, now we can speak loudly without worrying about the people inside hearing us." At this moment, Niss finally understood the purpose behind the old man's series of actions. The general hiding is to find a hidden place to hide. A more clever hiding is to place oneself in plain sight and go unnoticed. And the highest level of hiding is to make the other person blindfold themselves and cover their ears.